Hi, this is Lucas from Scribal Workshop. This is our third video about simplified bookhand calligraphy. Today we're going to focus on the majuscules, or the capitals. Once again, you're going to need a 2mm calligraphy marker from Speedball and the downloadable handout that has all the capital letters ready for you to trace. We'll be working through each letter one at a time, and I'll try to show you some variations of each one that you may like as well. Capitals are probably the most variable in any calligraphy hand and can really help to embellish and make your work look unique.
So the A starts with a slanted vertical and then a curve at the bottom. There's then the little flag or the embellishment that goes onto the top. Usually it can be done in 1 or 2 strokes. The second diagonal is very similar to that curved vertical. The other variation is to actually start with a curved vertical, make it actually vertical, and then add your diagonal and your embellishments as well as your crossover. This has a more swooping look, has a different look to it. That flag actually overwent a little bit too far. The B is a vertical, a curve at the bottom, it's that half of a bottom curve, and then the top curve, and then another top curve for the top. You can see this has like a diagonal joint in the middle and a little embellishment. The variation of this is actually to make that bottom curve a little bit flatter and round out the top and add that top curve. So it gives you a little bit different of a join. It's less of a dynamic look. I tried to repair that and messed it up. Bottom curve, top curve for a C. The other variation that I have for a C for this is really just to do a little curl at the top. I actually don't like how that looks. The D, again, straight, embellishment, bottom curve, top curve. There's not much of a variation to do with that. The E is that single curve, the 2 lines that are horizontal but slightly curved. The variation, I just show you a different order to really put them together, which actually allows you to kind of give a little more smoothness to that bottom line. The F is the straight curve, the embellishment, and then the 2 crosses. Variation of it is to just do the whole thing in a much more fluid direction. The G is a bottom curve, horizontal, a vertical, and then that top curve. The variation of the G, I just seem to do it in a different order, and it's basically the same thing. The other variation of a G is to actually make that section all in 1 stroke. Then you could curve that top however you want. The H is 2 verticals and a horizontal, and then an embellishment. Fairly basic. There's a variation of it where you make it look more like a lowercase, but add a little more swoop, make it a little bit bigger, and add that flag. You can also play with different shapes and designs, but understand that if it looks ugly, that's probably not the one you should use. The I is fairly straightforward. It's a vertical and 2 horizontals. You'll notice with all the horizontals that I'm doing, I'm adding a little bit of a swoop at the beginning and the end. It's not as much as you think. So again, this is some variations and some ideas. That one looks more like a dumb looking L, and so that's probably not a good idea to try that. This next one looks a little more like an I. The J is that vertical, a bottom curve connecting to it, and a horizontal. You can add a little embellishment if you want to. I find that adding that second curve actually sometimes makes it look a little bit more like a T than it does a J. The K, there's a couple of variations of the K. It's more about how you put on that bottom leg. So first one, you get the vertical, you get a curve, you get a second curve, and the variation of it is actually the top curve's about the same, but then your bottom leg kind of sticks out there. This is nice if you're trying to fill space or trying to go underneath and add an embellishment underneath some letters. The L is relatively straightforward. The M The variation on the M, this one uses all straight and diagonal lines. Variation on the M is basically a very, very tall, normal looking M, like the lowercase m, but it gives you a variation to use. The N, very similar to that M again, and the variation follows the same pattern where you're making a large and tall minuscule N with an embellishment. The O, there's really not another variation of the O. P has a straight vertical, an embellishment, and then your two curves. You can vary the P, changing how that bottom leg looks, changing some different shapes, playing with how it connects together, heights and levels and things, just to give you some ideas of stuff to play with and decide what you want your capitals to look like. The Q, the variation of the Q is really just showing you that you can connect those two curves before you do the cross, and there's not a significant look in the end result. The R, a vertical. Basically this version makes a P and then adds a diagonal. The other variation of it changes those connections a little bit. The S, the other variation of the S is actually to just go at a lower angle for the diagonal. I don't like that one as well. The T, there are a few variations where you can change the shapes of that vertical, add embellishments or take off embellishments. The U is that tall vertical again with a large curve at the end and then a little bit of an embellishment. There is another variation of the U, but I don't like it. The V really varies with how much of a curve and a point you put on that second stroke. W, this one is very much so like just a much larger minuscule W with an embellishment flag. The other variation looks a lot more like the upside down capital M, so you're working with all diagonals, a lot like two V's put together. The X, this one uses horizontals at the top and bottom of those. There's another variation where you use a diagonal, which frankly looks not very good. I don't recommend it for the capital. The Y, you'll notice that this Y looks like the alternate of the minuscule or lowercase y. The other capital Y looks like the other version of the lowercase y. They're very, very similar. It's just whether you add that embellishment or not. The Z, still straightforward, just much larger. You can add a little more swoop to those horizontals.
Thanks for joining me. I just want to let you know I'm creating this video series to give you something to work with as we delve deeper into medieval lettering and illumination, as well as other ways of being medieval. There's several ways you can become part of this journey. You can subscribe to us here, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most of all, you can support us on Patreon by contributing every month, as well as through our website by buying some of our handmade writing tools. Thanks for joining us.